Hey everybody, Andrew Ragas, Northwoods Bass Fishing Adventures, finally checking in with the fall little mini video report. I'm going to get into great detail here over the course of the next 10 to 15 minutes. Hopefully everyone tunes in and I get your engagement here and get your attention also. So month of September, worst fishing I've ever had in my life, I think, for up north standards. It was warm all month long. The fish were confused. They had no idea what to do with all the warming temps. And then this persisted into the first few days of October. I was back on the water again, October 1st through the 5th. Same situation, heat waves. Then it finally started to gradually cool. And then by the first weekend of October, October 7th and 8th, which also coincides with my birthday weekend. Around then, that's when everything started to turn finally. So our lakes began the turnover process. And ever since then, we've had two really nice cold fronts, a very gradual cool down. Things are going to be steady until late next week with daytime highs and temps in the upper 40s to low to mid 50s. That's going to be about as good and comfortable as it gets now from here on out until the end of the season. So on the turnover front, the expectation, what to expect, if you were on the water in the 2 weeks prior, your typical small lakes that stratify, those are the ones that usually end up going first during that process. You give it about a week, those lakes are going to clear up all within a week, and then they become fishable. So last week my pattern was smaller lakes, places that turned over or either didn't stratify, and I was also focusing on rivers and flowages, and I found fishing to be very good on those types of destinations. So in early October, again, starting around that weekend of the 7th and 8th, small lakes were starting to go. I could see it, I could sense it. I fished a few of them. At that point, lakes were starting to get a little clouded up. They were no longer crystal clear as usual. And we also we're starting to see some plant life floating upwards. So those are your indicators that lakes are turning over. As of last week, I tried to stay away from bigger lakes. They are usually going to be the ones that are next to go right now. I did visit a couple mid-sized bodies of water ranging in size from 500 to 1,000 acres. I was still finding turnover happening on them, especially on one of them that is about 900 acres. So yeah, the indicator of turnover right now still, if the lake is cloudy, if it's light brown, if you're still noticing an algae bloom, as well as plant matter and masses and just the bottom detritus rising up into the water column, up to the surface, that means that the lake is turning. And also another good indicator is whether you're bass fishing or muskie fishing, you drop your bait within a foot of the boat, at least a foot below the surface. If you're noticing reduced water visibility, get off the lake. That's what I had to do one day earlier this week on Monday morning. So yeah, as far as what to expect with turnover in the coming days, to my surprise, some of our bigger bodies of water last week hadn't even started yet. I'll give out some lake names. I'm not going to admit whether I fished them or not, but Crawling Stone, Fence, Trout, Tomahawk, Minocqua, all of your typical big bodies of water, none of them had begun turnover as of last week. And then even into this weekend from my checks. So perhaps maybe by around now, I would expect them to be going, but I'm not on the water right now. So if you do plan on fishing bigger lakes, I would imagine that by next week, early to midweek, you're going to be fine, and the process will be completed on them too. So that's where we're at with turnover right now. Water temps are anywhere from 52 to 55. I'm just not finding a whole lot of wintering activity happening yet with the smallmouths. The few fish that I was catching late last week and then the other day, they were still relating to mid-depth structure. The wintering sites where I was visiting on the lakes that I was on, most of them were empty. Fish were just not in heavy concentrations. They were very scattered. I believe they're in the process of migrating still. Right now they're in those deeper water areas, 15 to 20 feet, but they have not slid deep as you would expect during post-turnover yet. So I think much still has to do with the warmer water temps. We're just post-turnover. We're just entering that cold water period right now, just barely entering it. So those fish just still haven't been quite ready yet. But whatever bass fishing I have done last week and then this week, I've been fishing no shallower than 10 to 15 feet. Majority of the bites that I've had have been in 15 to 20. I've been looking deeper than that, but I'm just not finding those heavy concentrations of wintering fish like you would expect this time of year. So yeah, that's that. Definitely not a numbers time whatsoever right now. I did catch 10 fish on Thursday, and then admittedly, I only caught one on Tuesday of this week, just 2 days ago, but it happened to be my biggest of the season, right at 21 inches. Didn't weigh it, didn't need to, but it was a damn good 5.5, 6-pounder. So no complaints on that. But if it's the only one that you're going to catch per day, hey, there's no complaints over a big monster like that. So yeah, there we are with bass. Over the weekend, I did spend a lot of time on muskies. Again, rivers, flowages, shallower lakes, dark brown lakes, lakes that are shallower that don't stratify. That was the winning strategy for us over the course of 4.5 days. My boat put 9 fish into the boat. Actually, it might have been 10. I know 2 of them we didn't photograph. We did get 4 that were within the range of 38 to 40 inches. And then I got a real big one, my 3rd ever, biggest and 2nd heaviest ever, which was a 49-incher. That one came Monday afternoon, right on the moon transit time at 2:15 p.m. So that was very exciting catch. We were finally due for a real monster. Even though I haven't put in much muskie time, unfortunately, this year, just due to bass and wanting to multi-species fish a bit more than usual. But well worth it. Right now, I am planning on being back on the water late next week for the full moon period, but the incoming weather and what I saw in the forecast on WeatherBug this morning, that might not really enable it or allow it, but we'll wait and see what happens until middle of next week, and then I'll decide on that. But if I don't make it back up for full moon week, I'm going to head back up November 1st, the day after Halloween, and then fish and stay until at least November 6th or 7th, and then winterize, call it a year. We wrap things up then. So that's the upcoming plan. So I probably won't have any time for bass trips, but I do want to make 2 more smallmouth outings if possible. I've got a couple destinations in mind that are worthy of a shot for late season and for big ones only. So if anybody is interested by chance, you want to set up something last minute, let me know. We can perhaps make it happen as long as it doesn't interfere with anything else that I want to accomplish or do between now and then. So special shout out, Kara Confer, catching her 2 first ever muskies with me, 38-incher and a 40-incher from Saturday. That was awesome. Muskies have been going good. Bass a little mediocre still, but I do feel the next cold front cool down. That'll drive water temps down into the 48 to hopefully around, let's go even colder than that. I'm hoping that after next week's cold blast, things get down to normal where they should be. I'm hoping for like a range of 45 to 49 degrees, just only because based on prior history around that range and those water temps, that's where I found a lot of these fish finally starting to snap. And that's my preference right there for whether targeting fish with artificial baits or with live baits. So where I've been finding smallmouths right now, it's all depth related, unfortunately. On some lakes, 5 to 15 feet. You might still find a couple fish shallow. Most typical lakes, 10 to 20, 15 to 20 foot levels. You're going to want to hope that there's some hard bottom contours, some good structure down there, whether it's hard bottom, rock, boulder, cribs. If you do by chance start finding fish in wintering sites and wintering areas on most lakes in this region, it can be anywhere from 20 to 30 plus feet depth. So it's really lake specific, lake dependent, what the lake has to offer as far as homing and wintering potential and the sites go. So it's really up to that fishery and its members of the population, what they find and what they utilize. Not every wintering hole is configured the same. Each lake is different, and it's really up to what the fish find and what they want. Some things that I like to prioritize this time of year, if you are targeting smallmouths right now into next week, and then once things start getting a little colder, paddle tails are still in the rotation. I'm going to be using a minimum weight of at least ½ ounce heads to 3/4 ounce. It can be minnow style or football head shaped. Deep diving cranks, even though I didn't throw one last week, that's also going to be a good one. That's probably going to be option number 2 or 3. If you do have to finesse them, Neds, football jigs, tubes, Demiki rigs, Carolina rigs. Those are just some of the favorites and things that I have rigged up currently on my boat. And then we're a little ways off still. I do want the water temps to cool off before I can turn to this blade baits. But for them to really work, I know guys who cast them, use them as search baits, no different than as a lipless crankbait, but the way I like to employ blade baits, I like to be in a vertical jigging position and situation where you've got fish sitting on rock humps or in their wintering holes. They're right below the boat, 30 feet down. All he takes is dropping the bait down and just rip jigging them up and down, up and down, up and down. So that's my way to go. And then as some of you guys have seen, I made a quick demonstration from Tuesday on live bait setups, what I like to run in my boat. Obviously, as a non-live scoping boat, I'm pretty old school as far as my approach goes. I grew up as a walleye angler primarily, so live bait's been in my blood ever since I was a child. The name of the game this time of year for all species, you want to put fish in the boat regardless of conditions, situations. There's going to be days of the week where fish are just not going to want to touch an artificial, and then on those days, like what I found on Tuesday, because it caught my only fish of the day while I was casting, live bait, big 4 to 6 inch juicy minnow on my rig. So my setup is fairly simple, though a little bit sophisticated. My system's something, it didn't happen out of nowhere, just out of a lot of trial and error. But I'm a fan of spinning setups. So my 2 setups are 7.5 foot medium action St. Croix Premiers and Triumphs. I've got them rigged up with size 3000 Cast King bait runner reels, bait feeders. A 10-pound mono. You want that monofilament because it's light. If a fish grabs it, it's not going to feel resistance like it would if you were using a braided mainline. Plus braid floats. Mono does tend to float, but it does give off some stretch, and it's far more weightless compared to braided line. It doesn't absorb water either. So when a fish does grab the bait and starts running, you're not going to be dealing with drop bait. So that's really the nice thing about it. I don't mind the stretch just because the rods themselves, it's your shock absorption on the hook set. So you're ultimately not going to be losing fish. So that's the nice thing about it. Tackle components, this is where things get a little sophisticated. I encourage you guys to go to northwoodsbass.com. If you aren't an online subscriber, maybe check it out for 1 month. This is where you're going to get all your information concerning terminal tackle and components that I use. But my setup is basically your typical Lindy rig, except for walking sinkers. I use Lindy no snag sinkers, ½ ounce to 3/4 ounce weights. And then the hook is super important. I like an offset Lancet circle hook, size 1 from Trocar. They are a little expensive on the pricey side. They aren't as readily available too, but if you do get lucky, it's the TK3s. So just do a Google search, Trocar TK3, and it will be that hook. And, enjoy the hunt and finding them because they aren't so readily available. But the nice thing about my circle hook approach, everything gets hooked in the corner of the jaw and that upper lip. So clean releases, that's super huge. No need to feed line to fish that might be running. They'll automatically set themselves in the corner of the jaw. Clean releases, no delayed mortality. And best of all, it'll prevent gut hookings too, which is common with other hook types, unfortunately. But, live bait, not necessary. It is an art form I've discovered. Obviously, we just like to put more fish in the boat, and then you never know the unpredictability of this time of year. You know, if you're on hot bites, you're on concentrations of fish, they're going. Sure, you can use any artificial that can get down there and get to those fish, you'll catch them. But on days where they're just being picky feeders, lack of activity, there's just nothing going, chances are live bait's going to save the day. So 4 to 6 inch walleye sucker minnows. You can also use red tails or creek chubs depending on availability of what's available at bait shops, or if you can trap and catch your own bait, that would work good too, as well as yellow perch. That's another good alternative for a do-it-yourself type of an approach. So a moment ago we were talking about artificials to use this time of year for smallies still and for all of your late season pursuits. One product that I finally got in my hands is the Z-Man TRD Gobies. These are brand new on the street. They are 2.4 inches in size. They come in an 8-pack. Z-Man finally has these out on the market, and they began sales on October 1st. So far I've only used these guys for one day. Unfortunately, I ran into a problem with the rigging on these little itty-bitty baits. All of the Ned heads that I am supplied with and use are unfortunately much too big for this small 2.4 inch plastic. So this is my wrongdoing, unfortunately, and because it's my preference and wanting to use heavier heads and bigger heads to get Ned baits down to the bottom quickly, my jig heads were just way too big, way too heavy, and the hook shank length was it was just way too long for a small plastic like this. But yesterday when I got back into the office, I had to contact Corey Schmidt, marketing director of Z-Man, and I'm like, Corey, I have a problem. My Neds are way too large for this plastic. What's your recommendation, and what do I need to do? So the two recommendations I got are to utilize the football Neds and the Nedlocks EWG. Both of them sold by Z-Man. Those are the two compatible jig types. I wish I knew this beforehand, but now you know. So if you are going to be using this product, if you do have the right size Ned heads already for this, you're going to be in luck. You'll have no issues. And also, if you do have the football Neds and the Nedlocks, it's compatible with this itty-bitty guy. And also with this, you can even drop shot with it too. Unfortunately, my bad, I do not have the adequate heads sizes to accompany the small plastic. But what I did use was a small football jig, Gamakatsu, small hook size, and it worked fine, half ouncer. So I'll include a picture of that on the side image here of this video, and you can see what I used, and it worked fine. But yeah, for those of you who are going to buy this and utilize it, you'll need the football Neds and the Nedlocks EWG, both of them also by Z-Man, and that's going to be the most compatible jig head type for this plastic. And that's my feedback on the TRD Gobies. It's going to be a fantastic little fish catcher. Unfortunately, I am not yet compatible rigging-wise with these little guys yet. For end of year fishing, we've got some really good things coming up, I feel. The way things have been going this fall, September was just like basically an extension of August month. It was just way too hot. There was no movement happening within the lakes and then turnover-wise, but everything that was going on in September seemed to be more subtle as a result, because once the first week of October came and the lakes started turning over last week, a week and a half ago, that's around when I started noticing that these fish locations and their movements, they were finally really happening, and fall patterns really started kicking in over a week and a half ago. So if you can get out on the water between this week through middle of next week, it's going to be about as good and comfortable as things can go, I feel, for end of October fishing. I'm still going to wait and see what the forecast does for end of next week. Right now, it doesn't look too promising, but me being more motivated to catch a big muskie rather than smallmouth right now, I might give it a go. But if things just look too miserable, and if we do see improvement in the forecast come Halloween week and after, I would probably much rather focus on fishing then, just due to scheduling and what the weather and conditions are like, and also as well as timing of the water temps too. Right now with things at 52 to 55, we're going to be stalled in that range here for the next week, and I don't think we're going to be seeing much of a decline in water temps then until this next big system rolls in towards the end of next week. And last year, bass were snapping between 45 and 49 degrees. I would expect and hope for the same again within at least a week and a half from now. So that's really my outlook. I do feel like fishing for anyone who's going to be doing end of season stuff between now until end of the year, whenever that'll be. I think we're going to have some pretty good opportunities here for during the first 2 weeks in November, so that could be it, hopefully. Everything that we've done between mid-September through now has been very comfortable out on the water, but unfortunately, the way things are supposed to go in the fall, the shittier, the worse, the colder the weather, the better the fishing can be. So you must brave it. And I do feel because of that, some of the best fishing of fall is still yet to come. As we close up here, thanks for tuning in again. Hopefully y'all learned something. Stay tuned for my actual report that I'm going to type out and write out. That's going to be up on the website here as soon as tomorrow. Stay tuned for the upcoming newsletters again. Next installment has to be sent out immediately within the next day. I hope to get to that as well. Be sure to check out all the newest articles I have on the website. I published 5 of them for the month of October. A couple free ones, 2 premium ones. I've got to finish up on November stuff here within the next week. I think those will be some pretty good ones too. Guiding. Right now I plan to fish next year some. I don't know what the schedule is going to be like. I'm just really only going to prioritize May month, probably end of April into May. We'll go from there. And then if anyone still wants to get out this year, let me know. We'll base it on what the weather's doing, what my availability is. And realistically, I only want to put in maybe 2 more days of bass, and then the rest will be other fish and other pursuits. So that's where we're at with the status of everything. But remember, best fishing is yet to come still. And we don't know when the first ice will come either. So get out there, enjoy it while you can. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Until next time.